It is the new and improved upgrade to the original Salamander type and the embodiment of Flame. It is SLD01 Flame Vulcan, with a kit of Fighter Core, Double Flame, Float Legs, and the leg ability of Spearhead, which passively buffs the heat cool stat of equipped parts just for having the leg equipped. Now, when it comes to having upgraded forms of the elementals, Wind Silk, which we got a number of months ago at time of recording, kind of expected that we would be seeing upgraded forms of the other remaining three at some point in the future. But never did we quite expect to have them see them look so powerful or even so much more imposing than the original models were before. And Flame Vulcan is most certainly no exception to this either, with a very powerful and a much better, well-rounded and synergetic kit that would allow her to keep up with the bigger dogs with some damage bonuses and some better support skills to make sure she stays on the field and remains as aggressive as possible. Fighter Core on the hit part is a support-based skill that, once activated, serves twofold. It basically is Fight Boost to self and all allies, which is a 50% boost to melee damage across the entire team, but it also serves like Radar Sight as the second half of that bonus, which is a 50% boost to success of everyone across the team, while also removing any enemy's stealth or conceal effects. So if they're trying to hide from you or sponge all their damage to specific parts, Fighter Core or anything that has a Radar Sight-like buff pretty much guarantees that's not going to happen no matter what. And it's additionally worth noting that Flame Vulcan is actually the first ever instance of Fighter Core on a female-type model, which will open up a whole slew of opportunities when it comes to what kind of melee-type combat kits you can bring to the table when it comes to female-only for PvP or any super invasions. If you want to make sure you stay on top of your damage, Fighter Core now is an option available to you. Flame on both arms is an ailment-based skill that serves two different ways, but also incredibly beneficial in both of those ways. When using Flame, much like Fire, but the predating ailment before then, it will set the enemy on fire with a damage over time negative ailment, which will slowly whittle their HP over time the longer the ailment is allowed to remain. However, Flame, on the other hand, also sets the user on fire with an equal DOT effect, but at the cost, while you remain with this effect applied to you, you maintain a times 1.5 damage bonus pretty much just for keeping yourself on fire. So basically, stoking the flame and getting all fired up, pun intended, boosts your overall damage as long as you can keep that effect active. Even if it is slowly whittling your HP over time, just make sure that you don't pack anyone with Stat Cleanse, because I'm more than certain Flame Vulcan probably will not appreciate her damage bonus being removed that way. Float Legs means that she'll have relatively solid coverage across all terrains at A rank across the board and S rank on Cyber, and her leg stats are actually pretty solid as well on that nice upper tier where a lot stronger float legs tend to sit. Not absurdly broken like a lot of powerful ones might, but still in that upper tier of where you'd want to sit in order to stay up to date with the higher competition. With a base mobility of 874, she's already off to a very solid start in speed department, and that's not including any terrain or Medarot bonus that does kick in before then. An evade of almost 1300 is also good too, as she'll have a pretty fair time dodging or grazing when she has the opportunity to. A melee resist of almost 1300 as well, and a shoot resist at just over 1000. Not too shabby, kind of in that middle ground of where you'd want to sit with your resistance, so she won't go down too terribly easily, but she's also not the tankiest out there. But it is also worth noting that as a float leg with pretty fair stats and a heavy limit of 2 and a pretty solid ability that'll buff her heat and cool stats passively on top of that, you really don't have much room to argue. Now, when it comes to her other numbers, she's not too shabby either, with a head HP of about 3650, arms about 3900, and legs at 3600 HP as well, in that nice little sweet spot where HP tends to want to sit, especially par for the course when it comes to females, which don't really tend to be overall tanky or overtly aggressive, and usually tend to focus more on ailments, and Flame Vulcan here is most certainly no exception to that. Plus, her heat stats are actually not too shabby either, at about 700 or about high 600s to high 700s, which means she actually can move pretty quickly on her own unassisted, And that's even not including any other possible speed boost that might be coming to her aid, such as terrain, Medarot, or any other bonuses that would come to benefit her. All this being said, though, as a pure set score, I honestly have to rate Flame Vulcan a pretty solid 7 out of 10 on the upper tier. While her attacks basically are just an upgraded form of Flame Tisala, which definitely was not super great, unfortunately, Flame Vulcan basically takes what she did before, makes it better and a whole lot more viable on the field, not just to herself, but also to make her much more of a threat to the enemy side with boosted damage. And that's not even including with Fighter Core or Spearhead to keep her damage or her speed up. Flame alone already is a very aggressive part. And even if you could argue Flame on both arms is kind of redundant, the fact that their stats are relatively identical on both arms as well does also kind of give you weight to your argument. But if, say, one arm goes down, that's not really going to stop you because you have a complete other one ready to use, so you can keep stoking the flames and raise the temperature on the battle. As mixed parts, I do have to rate her just a little bit higher at a 7.5 out of 10 for these same reasons. The float legs, like I said, are very solid. Fighter Core, now available on females alone, is a very, very valuable asset. And Flame alone, like I said, I don't even have to argue why it's good or why you need at least one of these. The only real warning I'm going to give you is that because both her arms are heavy, you might need to consider that when you're building your teams and you want to factor it into your builds. Not that it's going to completely cripple or destroy any kind of build that you're trying to go for, but it is worth noting. Plus, float legs with very solid stats and a heavy limit of 2, like I said, I really don't have to argue any further why that's a very solid investment.